Hey, everybody, man, I'm super excited about the lady that's coming on Strong Inspirations today. Oh my God. Let me tell you, she might not be able to hear me, but I met her when I was going through Gary, Indiana, a beautiful town with some beautiful people in Gary, Indiana. And I got to like that town. They had some stuff going on the upswing. And them people are resilient in Gary. And this is one of them. I got one of the head honchos in Gary, Indiana on my channel. Don't let the small Gary thing think you that, oh no, don't do that. Oh, this is a heavyweight on my channel today. You know, I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I give it to you straight, no chaser. I tell it like it is in my few minutes, and then I let my guests do the talking and ask a few questions. Things are happening here. Did you see the video I did with the guy who is a civil rights attorney and law professor? And I'm telling you, he said when he was doing his job down in Mississippi in the 60s and 70s, he carried him a 38. He said, white man, I'm gonna protect my people, and I ain't letting nothing happen to me. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady whose great-great-grandfather was Harriet Tubman's minister? And she talks all about Harriet and all that Harriet done. She's her biographer along with other people. Watch that video. Did you see the one that I did with the guy who's a minister? And now, you know, young guy, he's my classmate, actually. He's a minister, but he's very good friends. I mean, first name basis with Dr. King and the kids and all that. And I asked him, I said, well, if you were a minister during slavery, what would your sermon be? And he shared that. I watched that video. Did you see the video I did with the guy? He said that the white folks with the torches and the hoods came to his house at 3 o'clock in the morning. He said, now they had spit at me, they had shot at me, they had punched me. He said, but when they came at 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, I was a little afraid that moment. He said, I got on my knees. He's a minister, right? And I said a prayer and they left. Watch that video. I'm telling you, we jamming. So hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video. Watch, the lady is very knowledgeable. You're gonna like what she's got to say. Hit the notifications bell, because I'm putting up 3-4 videos a week. The train has left the station. People like what I'm doing because I'm getting comments. I'm getting comments from people. And then do this. Tell somebody about Strong Inspiration. Don't keep it to yourself. I've been saying that all along. Don't do that. Let it flow. Let it grow. Nourish it. Just send out the link on the video and let the people take it for themselves. Now, as you know, I'm a filmmaker, everybody. It's called Business in the Black. It's a documentary that I produced. Little old me, I ain't little no more, trust me. I showed this in 40 cities, and I came through her town, and I didn't show it in Gary, but I had it with me, and I had my book. Now the movie is streaming on Amazon, so you can watch it there. And this is the book. It's called Black Business Book. It's got over 200 facts that I know you don't know all of them. If you do, you get your money back. A book with a money back guarantee, boom, shaka-laka, here it is. I'm not fooling with you, my friends. I'm coming with you straight. So get you a copy of my book, Slaves Who Went to College, and I name names. I name names of slaves who own businesses and the name of the business, and that they use the money to buy their freedom. It's all in my book. Some of that's in my movie. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Lastly, I know the lady's waiting, and I got one more thing, 2 more things. I got my own Black History Festival. Oh, I'm jamming, and I'm telling people, you need to come down to Kansas City, Kansas. People ask me, why Kansas City? They didn't think of it like this. Let me tell you what happened right quick, my friends. There is Missouri and there's Kansas, and they're both called in the state. Missouri was a slave state. Kansas was a free state. When them slaves got across that river, which wasn't long, which wasn't wide, they could get to their freedom. Now, that don't mean that the guy wasn't coming over there looking for them. I interviewed a guy who said his great-grandfather did that. All right. And it's an incredible story. Incredible story. That's why I want to go there. So we're going to have a party in a barn on Friday night, fish fry. We're going to honor some of them people in that area. They're giving me names. And then Saturday, and I ain't gonna rush you neither. So Saturday about 10 o'clock, because you're gonna hang out Friday. We're gonna chit chat. We're gonna vibe Friday night. And so it ain't maybe too late, but we're gonna rock them. I ain't gonna have you come there and not enjoy yourself. So then Saturday, we're gonna do tours from 10 o'clock to about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, we're gonna have a picnic. And I got the people cooking the food. I got holistic stuff. I got health fair, everything. You're going to enjoy this. It's on my website, businessintheblack.net. It's a nominal fee for the weekend. You get your food and admission to everything. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Watch this. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the lady on the channel today. She's got oh man, you're gonna trip out. She's got a beautiful backdrop. She's a beautiful lady. So come on, introduce yourself. Tell us, a little about you. Come on, just introduce yourself. We'll take it from there.
Okay, my name's Patricia Brown, Mrs. Patricia Brown. My husband and I have been married almost 59 years now. I can really say 60 because I count the time, the time that we met, and it was a beautiful relationship. And because of that relationship, we have 2 daughters, and we are very pleased to say we have 7 grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to.
Yeah,
to count them. I'll have to count my great grands because
yeah,
what a blessing it is. Yes, what blessings.
Yes, let me ask you a couple questions. Are you originally from Gary?
No, right next door, East Chicago, Indiana. And we say East Chicago because that's the way it is on the map, but we are really the harbor people, the harbor. Indiana Harbor.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How did your folks get there? And where did they come from before there?
Okay, my mother came out of, she was born in Orleans, Louisiana, and she was born there back in 1912, and her mother brought her to East Chicago to be with the grandparents in that year of 1912. So she was brought to East Chicago as a baby.
Okay.
And she was raised in East Chicago. And my father, he was born in Bear, Mississippi, which is another long story.
Yeah.
He was born in Bear. He was really supposed to be, they say, in Denola, Mississippi, but his family was forced to leave the land in order to, so they were kind of forced into Bear, Mississippi. And it's another story going there, but.
Okay. What was the attraction to, other than, the family was there? Why East Chicago? Was there an industry that they came for?
Yes, it was the steel mills. The steel mills at that time, during that time period, the East Chicago steel mill, Inland Steel was already there, and that drew my mother's people out of New Orleans into that area. But they were from New Orleans, and they bought their cattle with them, and they started. They bought their cattle with them, and they were farmers coming into East Chicago, but they also purchased their land. So they were people that had some means.
Yeah, I like it.
Isn't that wonderful? During that time, they were able to raise their family, which was 7 boys and 2 girls. And the 7 boys, as they grew older and became grown, they end up building 7 homes for the
I love
family.
it.
Isn't that precious? I said, wow.
Yeah,
And
I love
those homes actually stayed in the family for generations.
I love it. Let me ask you this, and just give us the short version if you don't mind. You said that your great grandfather had to leave.
Yes, he was in Indianola, Mississippi, and he came out of Franklin, North Carolina. Him and his wife, they came across the wilderness by wagon back in, let me remember the year, back in the early 1900s, like it had to be late 1800s.
Okay.
They came by wagon, him and his wife, the oxen, and his one brother. And they also had 2 younger people with them. They were the ages of 13 years old. And they came by wagon, and it took them 3 months to cross that land, the wilderness, from North Carolina into Indianola, Mississippi. 3 months out in the wilderness with 3 young children. By the time,
I mean, I know that might be a long trip, but why did it take so long? Do you think is there something to that story?
Yes, it was the wilderness. There was nothing there, nothing to help them to come across the land but what they had. So I'm sure they had the cow with them because they had young children. And she was a young bride, only
I got you.
the babies and whatnot. And it was just the brother. He was a grown man, and the 13-year-old, there was a boy and a girl. One was a relative. The young man, it didn't seem like he was kin, but he was also coming, and they were helping the family out. And in that type of wilderness, who knows what type of papers they had to carry in order to get from one place to another.
Let me stop you there. What you mean by that is, did you think they ran across racist people and had to hide and any of that kind of thing when you said papers?
I'm sure they would have had to, because by the time they arrived in Mississippi and set up their by the time they arrived there and set up their farm, and they farmed several years before they were forced off that land because of the crop he produced was so, they said the watermelon included, was so high in quality. The whites wanted the land, and he ended up signing his land over 3 o'clock in the morning to the mayor. We have the documentation of that.
Oh, really?
And, yes. And they forced him into Bear, and he went there and did the same thing. It's not the land, it's the farmer we're talking about. He knew.
I like this.
He knew what he was doing.
So maybe when they got the land from, when they forced them, did they give them any money, or they just said it's ours? Do you know that?
I have, as far as an exchange, I do not see. I have to look again because it's been a little while since I looked at papers coming out of the county of Indianola, Mississippi. I have to look again at those papers. Believe me, if they gave them money, it wasn't enough. It's not enough when it comes to an exchange dealing with white folks and black folks during that time period.
Sure. Now, let me ask you this. And this is just you and I. Well, I mean, if you don't mind, I do ask this question, and I mean no disrespect. Mm-hmm. Being fair complected, is there white in your family?
Yes, there is. As a matter of fact, my grandmother's father He was fathered by the plantation owner.
Oh my God.
Yes, and because of that, he was, I guess, his mother's first child. And I'm not sure because we don't have those type of records, but she had him, and then she had a husband later that two other children were born. So there were three boys. He was the firstborn and the oldest, and his father was the plantation owner. And my grandfather ended up being a man of, he had a dairy farm. And when we look at a picture of him, that really what started me in my genealogy walk.
Yeah.
I said, how could this man that looks white to me be part of our family? And that began the search, because my family, as they looked at his picture, they would tell me things like, well, that was, great granddaddy. And they never even questioned, the color was never questioned.
Really?
So, no, color is not really discussed in Black families the way people think it is. We just assume and take it. And we don't discriminate because of the color of the skin. That's not our people. Our people we accept our people for who they are.
That's right. Let me ask you this. Was his wife darker complected or no?
I have no idea. I do not have a picture of her.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
But she would have to be, when you look at, when you look at his, she would have to been a woman of color, because he ended up marrying, they said, 3 women of color. The first one died, which was my great grandmother, and he had 8 children, let's say 10 children by her. Several children did not live. They died as babies. But he had children by her, the 8 or 9 children that they were able to raise together. And then she died. And then he ended up marrying another woman of color. And she died. And a third woman of color he married. And he had children with with all the women. He had children with them. So he went on with his life.
Let me ask you this. When you look that fair, you could do some things and marry another fair person so that you can play white. So there's a sense of consciousness that he has that he does not want to do that.
Right.
There's a question there.
Well, I think it's something innate within you. You know who you are, a person, and you want to be who you are. So you just do what you need to do, and you let people deal with their idiosyncrasies, or let them deal with their inability to accept for who they see you are, or who they think you are. So you just be who you are and go on with it. You cannot change people's status when it comes to people of color.
When he left North Carolina to go to Mississippi, he was going from one hotbed to another, and maybe Mississippi was even hotter.
I agree. And what the family went through, there was some trauma in that time, but him being a farmer and his brother being there with him, they were able to farm their land, build their home, and he was a person of means. At one point, my one of my cousins, she had an article out of Evanston, Illinois, saying how he had a vehicle. I don't know whether it was a wagon or whether it was electronic, some type of car, but it was enough to hold his 8 children and wife, and they went back and forth wherever they had to go. Yes, because he was a person of means.
Now, so when you a person of means and a farmer, that means your crops are so good, so you have so much land that you can sell enough to make a living off of it.
Exactly. He kept his land because at one point after his first, well, my grandfather also had three wives. After his first wife died, he ended up raising, the youngest was my father. He was born in let me remember the year, 1906. And he ended up raising my father till he was about 16 years old. And then the family, the older children were coming north. They were coming into an area, East Chicago, Indiana.
And now let me ask you this. You said they ran into some stuff. Do you have any stories of, beside them taking his land, of when he was in Mississippi running into some racism or some lynchings going on, any of that kind of thing?
Right. Well, what we had by my husband being a Southerner, he said if your grandfather killed a white man in the state of Mississippi, he could not have been able to live there any longer.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I told my husband, I said, well, I'm going to tell you what my family told me. They said when the man, he was away from the house, he was out in the field or wherever he was. They said he didn't really farm his land. He hired people to do that, him being a man of means. Okay. But wherever he was, when he came home and his older daughters, there was a white man that came into the house trying to attack one of them. And because he caught him on the spot, he killed him. And in the killing of that man, when I tell this to my husband, he said, no way he could have remained in the state of Mississippi killing a white man like that. I said he did. I don't know the story behind, because he killed the person that was trying to take advantage of one of his children.
Yes.
I don't know. I've never looked up or whether there were records or any type of
court case and stuff.
Any type of case on it. I never really looked for it. Maybe I should, in order to get the details of it. But I told my husband he did remain in the state of Mississippi. And he did come north later, but that was much later after he had married his second wife and divorced her because she was trying to take his money. She married him with the intention of gaining his wealth. But because of his children leaving and coming north, the 8 children, he gave each of them $1,000 to come north. So you're talking about $8,000 given the children in order for them to travel and reset up their homestead in the north.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the type of thing. People of wealth, when they have money, of course, he's going to go on with his life.
Yeah, I love it. So so when they get north, at that time, is the trains running so that they can take the train up north, or do they still have to travel by the the horse and in the carriage and that kind of thing?
No, they have trains. We're talking, my father left his father at the age of 16. So do your arithmetic. You're talking about he was like 22 years old. It was in the 20s. It was the roaring 20s. So put yourself in that type of setting. Yes, the trains, yes, the cars, yes, and he probably had cars, because of the wealth that he had.
Yeah, I got you.
And his color was I have a picture of my grandfather. He was very dark complected, very rich, beautiful color.
Oh, really?
Wow, look at this wonderful looking gentleman. Yes, granddaddy.
Is there any education, HBCUs, any of that going back that far in your family?
No, he was a farmer.
But did any of the kids go to HBCUs early in life?
No,
No,
none that I,
okay.
well, they were not farmers. They were just his children,
I
and he
got you.
raised them, and they raised one another because his older girls took care of the younger children.
I got you. I
Matter
got
of fact, yeah, at one point after he married a second wife, my father, or whatever the choices was, my father came north to his sisters to be continued in their household.
you. Right.
And
I got you.
were, yes,
I got you. Let me ask you this. Is there have you ever been to where you to Mississippi to the land?
yes, we have. That's where we were able, my husband and I, able to pull the records that we did pull dealing with the land. And we had a wonderful time in Indianola. We never really been to Bear because we didn't find out about Bear until later as the story went on, Bear,
Right.
Mississippi. But I did have Facebook friends and some other friends that I communicated with about Bear, and they were
Right.
telling me that it was a small community and it's, very rural like. So I said,
Right.
wow,
Let me ask you
yes.
this. When you did this research, and when you went down to Mississippi, is there a point that you cry?
Um, you're talking about cry because of the research?
Yes.
No, it was really a point that the burden is so heavy. The Lord permits you to grow stronger because of the anger you go through. What
You
they did.
what were you angry about?
I was angry over the fact that the family struggled so much throughout their whole lives. It was no let up of the racism that they had to endure. And with the color of the skin, it's so dumb. It's just so stupid the way people use the color of the skin
Yeah, I got you.
to divide human beings.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's like, my God, and if he sits on the throne one day, we too shall see the end of that mess.
I got you. So now, when they get to East Chicago, life in working in the steel mill, that's not an easy life.
No, it is not. But they weren't. Now we're going to the other side
Okay.
to my mother's family, because when
Okay.
my father's family came to East Chicago, it was mostly girls. So they married, and it was their husbands, that was working in the steel mill. The women at that time, during that time period, they weren't working women. There was no such thing as having a job.
Oh,
When
I
I
got
came
you.
along, yeah, in our family, when I came along, we were the first ones to seek employment. It was my older sisters were the first ones to seek employment. My mother and some of my mother's family, they didn't have jobs. Women placed were in the home to raise their children. So it was a different society.
Okay, but then I do know that in many instances, the women did work outside the home as a maid for the white guy.
Right. That was one of my aunts, but the aunt that came through that, she was her mother, my grandmother, my mother's mother. She
Okay.
was by the second husband. And she ended up, when she became a grown woman and she moved to Gary, Indiana with her husband, they bought a very beautiful home that was built by a Black builder. His name was Andrew Means in Gary, Indiana, and he built a whole subdivision of homes for people of color. And you can go to Gary, Indiana and see those homes today. They are absolutely gorgeous because he knew what he was doing when he built his homes. And the home that my aunt and her husband bought, it was his home that he had moved out of. And when I went in the home, I asked her, I said, wow, you have a dishwasher? She said, yes. She said that came with the home when we bought it. So he had things back in the 20s that you really didn't hear about.
Yeah, it sounds
Nothing.
like it. What's
during the
that district
30s.
called?
Yes, when these homes were built.
What's the name of that district?
It's called Andrew Means, let me see, Means Subdivision,
Okay.
MEANS subdivision. It's in Gary, Indiana, right off 21st Avenue.
Okay. Now,
He's a black.
Gary, is there a white side to Gary back in the day?
Gary was very much so, and they were very, very discriminative. They didn't want the blacks to come in certain areas. They confined them to a certain area, and the area at one point it was called the Patch, because you had these blacks that were extremely well educated, that were being discriminated against, held into those boundaries, and it's just unbelievable, but it's true.
Now, where did many of them go to college? Was Indiana University, is that close, and they allowed blacks to come at the time, or?
Back during those days, no. It was not Indiana University. They went to the Southern black colleges.
Okay, I love it. I got you.
Yeah, they went wherever they were, wherever they could go, that they were welcome. The doors were shut for the Garyites the way it was anybody else.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, where anybody else of color all over the United States, they practice this discrimination.
Now, there's a white side of town and there's a black side of town in Gary.
Yes, there was at one point before our honorable deceased Mayor Hatcher took office, Gary was all white as far as the better homes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then as far as the black builders, we had, trying to remember his name, not only Andrew Means, but there were several architectural builders, but they didn't hold those titles because it wasn't allowed for blacks to even have titles like that. But they were builders. I'm trying to remember his name. Okay. It slips right now, but he also was there, and he put up several institutions in Gary, Indiana. Gary's got a lot of powerful history.
So Gary, what would you say Gary's heyday is, or was? I mean, not that it's not now, but when the steel mills was really popping and stuff like that. What time period are we talking about?
Gary started in 1906, and Gary at the beginning, back in 1906, they call it the boom day because Gary was a city that started overnight. The industry was just that powerful. When you talk steel mills, you're talking MONEY that have dropped in Gary, Indiana, and anything that they wanted, they built, the whites.
Okay, do you know this? What steel mills, the ore comes from where?
They call it the iron ore.
Right.
So it's coming from the ground. The iron ore, the coke, I should call my husband in here because he's more dealing with the physics of what you're asking. The iron ore, the coke, and there's 3 products that make steel.
Okay.
And magnesium, iron ore, coke, and another,
But
limestone. There it is.
Okay.
Iron ore, coke, and limestone. And that came in from the ships. It came in from the trains. It came in through the trucks. Anywhere they could get those products, there was quarries in Illinois that supplied us with the limestone that was needed in order to produce that steel.
Okay.
So your raw commodities were coming in from the lake. You know, we have Lake Michigan.
Right.
U.S. Steel sits right there on Lake Michigan. All the steel mills have to have access to that waterway, and they were all Inland Steel, Youngstown, U.S. Steel. The biggies were all on that harbor waterway.
When they were when it was popping, what kind of lifestyle was that for Black people? Was it? I mean, I know they had money, so they dressed up to the part,
Yeah.
you know. And I say that because it's kind of similar to Detroit. You know,
And
when
very,
the automobile
very,
industry, the brothers and sisters were sharp. We had homes. That was
very
Gary's
well,
makeup
very
too.
well educated, very well educated, because Gary was known for their educational system. Gary put out,
Right.
oh yeah, they were known worldwide for their educational system. And Gary put out some highly educated people. And it's tremendous when you say Gary, Indiana, because the people there, they were sort of self-confined, but yet they lived the lives that was accessible to them, because the money was, I don't want to say the money was flowing, but the money was there.
Yeah. What was the Black business district? The name of the street and the district
It
where
was
all of the shops and stuff was.
It was called Midtown. If you were, and it was I don't want to say the wrong address, but coming from like 12th Avenue and going south, Midtown was there. Your Black churches were there, your Black industries, your Black stores, and it wasn't a lot of them, but it was a sufficient amount of them, where you had, going from 12th north, you had your high-end stores, you had Litton's, you had Sears, you had Goldblacks, you had some of the high-end industrial stores, and it was all right there in Gary, Indiana. And because of their discrimination, they didn't want Blacks working in that area of your high-end stores. So if they were there, it was a rare, maybe somebody was able to operate the elevator.
Yeah, okay. I got you. Did Gary ever have a riot?
I'm sure Gary had some riots, because from what I heard, the KKK was in our back door, and they were lynching Blacks on
Really?
Remember, we're talking America. They were lynching people, and they would disappear, and people would wonder what happened to them. And all that was said was that, well, they went beyond the area that they should have been in, and they were threatened. And even one of my neighbors, at one point we weren't allowed in certain areas. They even had it written on the deeds that people, when they got ready to sell their homes, do not sell to Blacks. But of course, back then they called them Negroes, colored folks, and whatever else we were called, niggas, whatever else we were called. It was in black and white paper. So yeah, it's very much like Detroit and any place else in these America, Tulsa, Oklahoma, wherever you see Black wealth, people that are able to get over and really and be very comfortable in their setting, you're gonna see whites being on such a hate mission. It's inhumane. They're not humans.
Did you ever see, you never saw Black only, white only signs yourself, did you?
My husband did. Him being a Southerner.
Yeah.
And the only one there was one that I heard about in the grocery, not the grocery store, in one of the stores downtown. But I did go to this funeral home over in my hometown, East Chicago, Indiana. And I went upstairs because it was bought by Blacks, was owned by whites all up until the time period until the Blacks bought it. And it was a mural that was painted on the wall dealing with slavery. And I said, whatever you do, do not cover it up.
what led you to like Black history like you do?
The desire for truth, to want to tell truth. And what is truth? Truth is something that you have, that not only have you found it, but it's and your spirit agree with you. You know how we're guided.
Yeah.
And you know beyond any means that you are finally receiving truth.
Is there something that other than in your family, a truth that you found of some sort, a story you want to share that maybe some other people might have not heard of, or something like that?
Well, there's a lot of stories. I can go on forever, especially when it came to my mother and her being supported by my father. Her walk in life was tremendous. She had a total of 17 children, and she ended up raising 10 of her children into adulthood. And because of the type of person she was able to help many people to come up higher in their lifestyle. She found jobs for people when jobs were not heard of for Blacks. The steel mills would only let Blacks in if you had someone to help you get in. And my mother was that type of person. The steel mill at the time was Inland Steel, and Inland Steel was ran by the Joseph L. Block family. And she knew Joseph L. Block personally.
Oh, really?
So she yes. I mean, whites are whites, but they're not that stupid.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
he's running an industry. He's running a steel mill,
Sure.
and he needs people to run it. So the color is, and discrimination goes around, it's around the people. It's not around the rich. It's not around the ones that have the wealth. They don't have time for that type of nonsense.
Sure.
They're thinking of their dollar bill.
And 17 kids. Wow, that's a lot of kids.
And she was able, by my father, and she was able to raise 10 of us into adulthood. And because of that, all of my brothers and sisters, they were very strong people, because we knew that whatever we did, we had to answer to our parents. And they raised us with the rod, and it worked.
I love it. And so now you are part of an organization or something like that, right?
I have been part of several organizations all of my lifetime. I was raised that way. My mother was a volunteer. She never worked. She was a volunteer in all that she did. And she volunteered for Girl Scouting way back when Girl Scouting wasn't even heard of among people of color. Mm-hmm. And she was a dancer. I saw where she was a dancer when she was in high school. I said, oh my God, look at here. But that's stuff that my husband and I did in genealogy. Yeah. We were able to go into the past, and look at my mother. I've got pictures of her back then, and newspaper articles that she was included in. It was a party given, and Blacks weren't covered in regular local newspapers. They were covered through newspapers coming from Indianapolis or other towns. Yeah. And the editors would send people up north in order for us to have Black news going out. So the same way you have the Jet and Ebony magazine.
I got you.
Your newspaper were the same way. They didn't cover Black news. Black news was only covered by Black industry, Black newspapers, Black magazines, Black, whatever it was, it had to be covered. And even with the churches, we were raised in one sect of religion. So I wasn't really open to the other sects of religion. I didn't know anything about them. And I was comfortable where I was. Until later in life, it was my children that that helped me and to open my eyes as to the truth when it comes to religion.
Got you. So have you ever thought of writing a book or something like that with all these stories?
Well, not really. I
Yeah, I
thought
got you.
about myself being a genealogist. I rather give, give. And
I
my
love
husband
it.
and I have been teaching genealogy for the past 15, 20 years.
Oh, really?
And we're not limited to people of color. We also taught in the white area, which is Hobart, Indiana. Now blacks are finally there, but back when we started teaching, there were few, there's always a few that they're going to permit because of them working for them or whatever reason. And Hobart's not really a rich community. It was a white flight community where
I
a
got
lot
you.
of blacks that lived in Gary, that was one place that they settled in, Maribel, an adjourning community. They
I
went
got you.
there, yeah, all around the
So,
area.
do you have a website if people want to hire your services, people in the area or something like that?
Oh, I'm not for hire. I'm a retired.
I got you. I got you. I got you.
I'm a retired great grandma.
I got you. Well,
My
hey,
time, my own. My husband. I'm very selfish when I come to my time. That's how come when you asked me for this interview, I said, let me hurry up and get it over with.
I thank you so very much. I thank you for coming on the show
No,
and sharing that, especially the personal stories.
yes.
And then I got something that came to mind. When you told the story about your grandfather that he killed that guy, are you embarrassed by that? Or how does that make you feel? Because you said it kind of willingly.
It made me feel like the man stood up for his children.
I love it.
They were first.
I love it. And he
And his
knew that when he did that, he might have to face some consequences.
and I'm sure he could care less. He would have faced his consequences because he loved his family.
That's the last word, everybody.
Well, all right now.
That's the last word, everybody. Y'all get that. Y'all get that. I thank you for coming on the channel.
No problem.
So much. Everybody hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspiration because I'm finding all the people. I'm finding all of them. And hit the like button on this video because I feel better. Hit the notification bell. When it come up, you get a ding, a shock, or something that there's another video on Strong Inspirations. Tell somebody about us. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net. You can even follow me on Twitter at A Strong Dream. And if you're in that area in Gary and you're walking down the street, you see this lady, please just nod your head and say, hey, I saw you and I like you because you shared something with me that made me a better person. And I know she did. And so to you, I say this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. Tell your husband I said hi. I love that love. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing as you do when you want to do it. I like that too. With that, I'll say bye-bye, we out. See you soon.
Bye.